Welcome, everybody, to this episode. I have an amazing guest for you, Dr. Margaret Arnd Caddigan. Hopefully, I've said her name right. She will correct me. She is a psychotherapist and a host in Finding Our Minds podcast, where she does this really neat exploration of psychology, identity, and healing from a deep orientated side, but also on a spiritual side. But we're also going to tap into a book that she did called Embracing Paranormal Experiences so that people can see that these paranormal experiences are also a spiritual journey. Welcome, Margaret, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for that lovely introduction. And let me say, you pronounced my name correctly. Back when I
Yay!
was on faculty, my students used to call me Dr. Mac. Those are my initials because nobody can say Arnd Caddigan.
I did it. I did well then.
You did
You
it.
know, my first question to you is embracing paranormal experiences. Could you explain to my audience what you mean by paranormal? What type of
Sure.
experiences are these?
Sure. These are experiences like out of body experiences, including near death experiences and remote viewing experiences, kinds of bilocation. They're all the clairs, along with telepathy and precognition. In other words, they're all spiritual experiences. They're all experiences that have been recognized in various spiritual traditions as either a sign of or a call to greater transcendental alignment.
Wow. That's big. Okay, right away, I'm surprised that you're adding remote viewing and all of the clairs, which is what I do. That's what I do, one of the many things that I do with my clients. And I do even struggle myself with the labeling of it. Am I this? Am I that? Am I over here? Am I over there? But really, we're born to encompass all of these. I was just watching a podcast with a CIA agent that worked with the project called Stargate, and then they morphed it into another name, which is about teaching these agents how to do remote viewing. They literally could teach these agents to do it in a day. And
Mhm.
90, no, what did he say? 14 out of 19 of the people in the class were accurate the very first time. So remote viewing, everyone has access to it.
Yes,
And you want
yes,
them to understand that this is a spiritual experience. What exactly do you mean by that?
absolutely. Well, first of all, it's metaphysical, right? It can't be explained by our normal Newtonian kinds of physics.
Right.
So if it's not physical and it's metaphysical, that is what people have tapped into since the dawn of humanity and have enfolded it into their spiritual worldview. You can't do any of this without some kind of explanation that goes beyond our materialist world.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when you work with your clients, do you find that your clients are falling into your practice that have already had these experiences and they want to have a therapist or, that will work with them on that level?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. The way I got interested in doing this research was decades ago when I started as a therapist. I was treating predominantly women who had been abused in childhood. And almost every single one of them would kind of whisper, you know, I have ESP. Oh, cool. Let's look at that. Okay, let's look at that. And so, as I wrapped up my academic career, because it is not cool to talk about this as an academic therapist, um, it became less and less important to me to be acceptable. And I said, let's go there. Let's do that. The last piece of research I'm going to do as an academic is ask the therapists who work with people who have had these experiences, what's going on? What do you do? What's it about? And so, to answer your question, it's like there's two kinds of people. There are people who, at some point, quote unquote, confess that they have these abilities or they have had these experiences, or people who come in clearly distressed because they hadn't sought the experience. It happened spontaneously. They weren't ready for it. They didn't know how to make meaning out of it. Or what we see a lot is younger people going on witch talk and learning to do rituals and spells. And then when they work, they're like freaked out and like, oh
Yeah.
no, help me, what have I done? So to kind of help them, again, create some meaning around it, give it some containment, help them get their arms around it.
I love that. I think that both my practice and yours is in alignment, although I don't have years and years of education. Obviously, all respect to you for that. Although I did go to school for some psychology and philosophy, I find that, people that are gravitating towards me is because they can get a life coach that does do the spiritual journey part. In fact, myself looking for therapists in the past have had a very difficult and even high failure rate because I want them to work with me on that spiritual level, not just on a neurological level or a past trauma level. And I think that's hard for people to find. I'm really, really curious about what your advice is to other people that are listening that may be therapists, psychotherapists, counselors. What advice do you give them? Because they live in a normie world that tells them you can't talk to people this way.
So first, I want to say, as I was writing the book and I was having people read it, um, they it came to my attention. First of all, an experiencer. I wish somebody had given me this book when I first had my first mediumship breakthrough. It would have helped me ground. One of my friends said. And the other thing is that you don't necessarily have to be a licensed counselor or therapist to do many of the things that are recommended in this book. So I really
Mm.
want to tell the coaches and the mentors and the healers out there that let's all work together. In terms of what do you do finding a therapist, I think that my daughter has the funniest response, which is that you walk into the therapist's office and say, "I see ghosts." And depending on how the therapist reacts, you walk out
I
or
would do
not.
it.
Right. But all kidding aside, I think that people need to interview potential helpers. We look at that power differential and don't think that we have the right to say, I want to know, what do you feel about about spirituality? How comfortable are you talking about spirituality? How comfortable are you talking where I live? I live in the Southeast. How comfortable are you talking about spirituality that's not Christianity? Um, and and choose a therapist based on how well aligned they are with what you need. Roxburgh and Evenden did some research on clients who presented to therapy for paranormal experiences, and their findings were, in fact, that people were very put off by two things in particular. One, over pathologizing, and two, the therapist forcing their own meaning on the experience, trying to tell the client what it means. And so, if you are a coach, a counselor, a healer, radical presence, deep listening, full respect, and the ability to stay in not knowing, the ability to hold the discomfort of, I don't know what's going on yet.
Yeah.
And I don't need to rush that process.
Yeah. That's profound. That's deep. Do you find that people that have had paranormal experiences are traumatized by that?
There is a deep correlation between trauma and paranormal experiences. My own theory on that is that many children, we know that the paranormal experiences often come in times of great need.
Hmm.
And so many children need to know, can I walk into that room right now or not? And
Right.
so they are open to their own gifts and they nurture their own gifts and they grow into their gifts. And so when I say that these experiences are correlated with trauma, it's not that they're a trauma response, well, a trauma response, but in a positive way, right? I mean,
Right.
they're helpful, they're beneficial. Now, in my book, I do document some cases where the paranormal experiences themselves can be very distressing, particularly if you don't know what they mean and you don't know
Yeah.
where they're coming from. And and I really have to hit the stigma, right? There's three sources of stigma for these experiences that people have embodied. First, it's evil. It's coming from the devil. Second of all, it's insane. If you have the experience, you're crazy. And third, it's fraudulent. People who claim they have these experiences are just flat out frauds. And so it's often the case that family, loved ones, friends communicate this stigma, communicate disapproval, and then one's self-concept, one's self-esteem begins to start to crumble. And so helping these people come to terms with that stigma and kind of getting that negativity out, and coming to embrace their abilities is a really, really important factor.
Even if your parents are open to all of this, society has a stigma. Religion
Yeah.
has a stigma. Your
Yep.
school will have this stigma. Do you find that this has happened with a lot of children? Is that common?
Are you asking, is it common that children
Is
have
it,
these experiences, or is it common that when they do, they're shut down?
no, is it common that they have the experiences?
Oh, yes, yes. Children tend to be very, very open to these experiences, and we as a society teach them to stop having them,
Right.
teach them to repress them, teach them to ignore them, pass them off.
It's not to be. So my question is specifically with the millennial children, and the children after the millennial, I call them the matrix children because they're here to break down the matrix, is
Ah,
I'm wondering with all these neurodivergent labelings and discoveries and inquiries that these children are having experiences that they're not sharing or don't even know how to translate.
I think that's a very good insight. I think, that was well said. Certainly, we've all heard of the telepathy tapes, right? We
Not
know that.
everybody, you'd be surprised. I
Okay,
mention it to people and they're like, nope, not the normies. The
okay,
normies don't. But you should,
okay.
guys, go look at the telepathy tapes. I don't care if you just listen to one episode, it'll change your life.
Yeah. So of course, we don't know what experiences people are having because they are by definition subjective,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
If they don't feel comfortable sharing them, how would we possibly know? And there's so many ways we make people uncomfortable sharing these experiences just in casual conversation.
Yeah.
I, I was thinking today, the stereotype of the spiritual woman in our culture today is like this woo-woo hippie, right? And
Yeah.
I'm kind of coming to terms myself with this movement from academic, from Dr. Mac to woo-woo hippie. But
Yeah.
but that stereotype is harmful to those children who are afraid of being passed off as a woo-woo hippie.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Because it's not scientific, it's not academic, it's so therefore it's not respectable.
Right.
And I find that some of the now young adults are changing that paradigm. I've watched a few podcasts with young adults in their mid uh, to late 20s that quit school at the age of 16, and they're highly academic. They're making like scientific discoveries and engineer-based discoveries and right into AI. And it's like they knew they were born for this. And they're like, I'm not wasting my time in school. I'm just going. And one of them, who's 26, literally told the audience, if you know what you want and what your passion is and what your interest, you don't need to go to school for it. You can teach with what's on the internet now, you can enhance and teach yourself and just go and do it. And I
I
believe
think
that,
there's some wisdom in that.
yeah, and I
Of
think
course,
if kids were raised to just go with that intuition, to go with that self-knowledge or self-knowing, they wouldn't figure it out while they're bantering through university or college painfully, be feeling lost and not knowing why am I doing this? This isn't in alignment with who I am. And I think if you're a parent listening right now and you've got, and I ask you to give advice on this too, and you've got a child that may not be acting or behaving or enjoying school or social life as much as you would like them to, could you ask them, could you train them, could you teach them to look within themselves and say, well, what do you want? In your perfect world, what would it look like to you? How would you be comfortable in your own version of the way the world should be? That's a big question. I know.
that's a huge question.
You'd have to ask
Right.
them a few times. You'd
Right.
really have to like kind of train them into this kind of thinking is okay. Write an
Yeah.
essay on it, do
Yeah.
some homework on it. What would your advice
Well,
be?
well, I think attendant to that is the expectations on parents today are just crushing.
True.
Right? Everybody's working 60 hours a week, plus
Yeah.
trying to keep a home and raise children and do yard work and go to PTA meetings. And so if we say, now we want you to take responsibility for your child's education, we want you to kind
Their
of
soul.
guide that. Yeah, it's a lot, and I appreciate that. I wish that we had more choice in types of educational opportunities.
Hmm.
Right now, I choice looks like it's closing down, not opening up.
Hmm.
Um, so so we'll see where that goes. I think even when a child under the age of 16 is having difficulty in school, and trust me, both my children fit that scenario. Um, when you're giving them encouragement and support at home, they can get through it and they can go on and become very happy and successful. And so just remember that whatever it is that's going on in school, they need to hear from you that you love them, you support them, you honor who they are.
Can you imagine? I love those words. Can you imagine in a utopian world that kids could just do what they wanted to? If they didn't want to go to school anymore, they didn't have to go to school anymore. They don't want to hang out with Johnny down the street, they don't have to do that. And that no matter what they did, this sounds like a very sometimes some would say communist or Marxism reflection. But if we all got paid the same, or maybe there was no pay structure, and you just did what you wanted to do, and there was no level of eliteness around it, and you would all have the same opportunities no matter what your job was or what your contribution to society is, which is basically what a job is. Imagine how much happier everyone would be. And you could shift
It,
gears anytime you wanted to.
yeah, That that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I think you would contribute to society. I do think that human beings want to engage in meaningful activity, right?
Yes.
So they would get bored maybe for a little while. My kids used to do this in summer, right? I'd get bored. I got nothing to do. Sucks to be you. And the
Yeah.
next thing I know, my daughter is grabbing the movie camera and writing scripts and, filming her friends. And guess what she does for a living now?
Yeah, I
She's a
can't
writer
imagine.
producer. Right, right. And
Director?
so I think, yeah, yeah. And so I think that if we gave people an opportunity to get bored, to sit with themselves for a little while, people would
Interesting.
begin engaging in meaningful activity. Now,
Yeah.
meaningful activity could be painting a mural on the side of a building, right? I'm not saying that you're making widgets. I'm saying
Yeah.
there's a lot of meaningful activity.
That is a good point. We go out of our way to entertain our children and keep them active. Most likely, I would, because part of us needs a break. We don't want to listen to, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, screaming, yelling, how the body reacts when it's bored or when it's agitated or has some anxiety. Because kids are very good at expressing themselves physically, letting it come out physically, which is a good
Sure.
thing.
Yeah.
But when we're working, like you said, 60 hours a week, and that's the travel time, the work time, your headspace is still there when you get home, is we don't have the patience or, yeah, the aptitude to be able to handle that. So we just, here's your tablet, here's a TV,
Yeah.
go over there and do this. And it's our own basic survival needs as well.
Yeah.
What is your utopian world around that? What do you think it needs to be done?
I
The
think that
advice you could
my
give to
vision
these
is,
parents. Yeah.
yeah, my vision isn't too far off from yours. Wouldn't it be wonderful if we had people whose meaningful work was caring for part of the day for other people's children and helping those children live in society, live in the world. Um, and I think that certainly we would want those caregivers to be able to, again, honor the individuality of each child. So they wouldn't have 30 of them. They wouldn't be locked in a classroom, right?
Hmm.
Here, you take these because these are the ones who really want to read, and I'll take these who are the ones who really want to build birdhouses. Um, I mean, wouldn't that be great? I'm in my utopia. I believe that when we cooperate and when we are compassionate with each other, that that's a coalescence of transcendental energy, right? That it's greater transcendent energy. And so in my world, we would cooperate with each other.
Yeah, I love that. I think if we weren't raised with subordination and some sort of control by a system, and I'm not saying it's bad. My daughter's a teacher. Teaching is probably the number one most important job I find. You're taking care of our children 8 hours a day, basically. And I don't think it gets enough respect. But I know there's a lot of burnout as well with teachers. But if we weren't surrounded by that type of controlled environment, you got to read this for an hour, you got to go and do the math for an hour, we may be less compliant as adults. And I think we would be less compliant as adults. And we'd be able to run our own world the way that we would like our world to be run, because we would stand up to it or cooperate together better. But as an adult who has experienced this type of trauma, who did have a spiritual knowing of who they were and lost it along the way. I can't tell you how many people come to me and just say, I'm lost. I have no clue who I am. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's going to satisfy me. What advice do you give them? I don't know, how can they speed up their journey so that they can find themselves again?
I think two things. I mean, I think first of all, good meditative work, and I use meditation broadly. A lot of different kinds of spiritual exercises of connecting to the transcendent, finding that higher self. Um, those kinds of exercises are purely experiential, and I think it's important to engage in them. But I'm also, as a therapist, or a former therapist, I'm not sure which I am right now. Um, I, I I think that the way we know how we look is we have to look in a mirror. We can't see ourselves. And if we want to know how our spirit looks, right, the best way for that to happen is to have somebody reflect it back to us. Now, some people grow up in a circumstance where they're looking at a funhouse mirror, and what gets reflected back to them is distorted. So if we take that person and we put them in the company of somebody who can honestly reflect back, this is who you are at your core, and it's precious. I think that that speeds up that healing process.
And who is that person?
Well, it can be a coach, it can be a healer, it can be a therapist or a counselor, it can be a religious cleric, it can be a teacher, you name it. It
Yeah.
can be somebody who has the capacity to reflect other people back to them, who can see their light.
What is your take on what I call the process of elimination? That means that you are mirroring who you are not through another person. Therefore, that could be your children, it could be your parents. A lot of times, it's your parents when those experiences. Could be your partner, in which you realize, I deserve to be loved more than that. I deserve more nurturing. I am not someone who is unworthy of love or somebody that's to be abused or taken advantage of. I find that that's most everybody's experience. They wonder, why do I suffer so much? Why am I experiencing this? And often it's because you're mirroring, yeah, like you said, they're a mirror for who you don't want to be.
Yeah. Yeah. A very famous analyst once said the most adhesive part of our parents is their dysfunction.
Whoa.
I know, right?
Whoa.
And
Say
and
that
so
again.
we
Say that
are
again. I think we need to
the most
digest that again.
adhesive part of our parents
Parents.
is their dysfunction. So that means the thing that's the stickiest
That's right.
is the way our parents messed up. And so we go and find and are comfortable with that same mess over and over and over until we learn how to get it right.
And that's part of evolution. Because we are trying to become a better version of what our parents were. We're trying to become a better society than what our society was. We're collectively trying to evolve more than who we were collectively before, because that's hence
Yeah.
the word of evolve, is that is that. So that was kind of yeah, very well. And how often do you have people come to your practice that are my mom, my dad, my mom, my dad? They're reflecting their version of who they are based on their childhood.
Yeah. Even if they don't come with my mom, my dad, they say, I don't know why I'm an anxious mess. Everything gives me anxiety. I'm anxious all the time. I don't like driving. I don't like going to stores. Okay, tell me about your childhood. Right? How were you raised? Who said what to you when? What
And
have you been
that's how you
told?
find their triggers, right? Because you can't
Sure.
be affected by your parents' behavior if you don't have that trigger.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why you can have two siblings. Although Dr. Gabor Mate says every sibling is raised by different parents, even if they're the
That's
same,
right.
because their
That's right.
parents are coming from, you're the first child there, you got a different parenting. You're the second child, they're different as well. They're growing, they're evolving. they have situations that are happening in their lives that may not have been there when the first one was born. However, unless you have the trigger, and that's what I like when I do my work with astrology, I can see what they've come in with that they want to learn. And
Mm.
when I see that your mother was probably an alcoholic or had escape issues or maybe mental health issues, it's not so much because I can see the mother through their chart. It's because I can see their reflection of who their mother is through their chart.
Ah. Oh,
And
that is so cool.
so as soon as you see their reflection, like you ask them a question, how were you raised as a child? That taps you into who they are, not who their mother is
Mhm.
or who their
Right.
father is,
Right.
right? Yeah, granted, your mother might have been a rip-roaring alcoholic.
Yeah.
That's,
Right.
but your response, why does one sibling become an alcoholic as well, and the other one can't even stand a drop of alcohol? Their
Right. Right.
personality, their triggers responded to that trauma very, very differently.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love that. So as adults, you're saying dive into meditation, find someone who can help you reflect who you are on a deep spiritual level, and read your book. That would probably be very helpful too.
Yep.
Do you have your
Yeah, you
book
could.
handy? Can you show them
Um,
us
I do.
wonderful.
Um, yeah, and when I say meditation, I can't tell you how many people tell me, "Oh, I can't meditate. My mind is all over the place." I said, I can't do that. There are so many forms of meditation. We have all been taught this mindfulness stuff, and we've been taught predominantly Eastern forms of meditation. But the fact of the matter is, throughout Western history, from prior to Hermeticism all the way through to all of the neo-Hermetic Western traditions, there are lots and lots and lots of forms of meditation. And so I highly recommend you find the form or forms that work for you. And I guarantee you there is something out there that will work for you.
I find walking in nature very meditative.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I used to jog. I hope to jog again. I'm old. I got a little hip thing going on. That'll be cleared up. This is true. I wrote two books jogging.
Oh, that's interesting. Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
yes.
You
I
just
find that I get a lot
get
of answers while I'm out in nature. And
absolutely.
trees, like the more foresty it is, the better for me. I just
Okay.
love the energy of trees. Water as well, because water is a conduit, but it depending on how busy the location is.
Yeah.
When when you're talking to people about paranormal experiences, uh, I find that people are having these experiences without recognizing it. I find
Mhm.
when I see that in someone's chart that they're extremely in tuned with their intuition and their empathy, that when they walk into a grocery store and have a panic attack or an anxiety attack and they walk out and they feel fine. And I'm not going to dismiss real trauma-based, panic attacks and anxiety attacks. But if it's like you said, out of nowhere, I don't know why I feel this way. They could be having a paranormal experience. They could be walking in and sensing, reading the room with their solar plexus, with their heart center, and not recognizing that it's not them. And the reason that they
That
walk
is
away when they
brilliant.
walk out is because it's not them.
And that is absolutely one of the steps that I talk about, that the therapists who I interviewed in my research talk about, which is to teach people what's me and what's not me. What's the difference between information that I'm picking up from the outside versus information that I'm generating from the inside?
Ooh, well
And
said.
yeah, it's difficult to differentiate between the two because they're both subjective experiences, right? I'm the one having both experiences. So how do I know what the source of the experience is? And I've read lots of books where people will give you a real pat answer, like, oh, if you feel it in your stomach, it's this, versus if you feel it in your chest, it's that. I haven't found that kind of regularity. What I have found is that there's differences for you. And we need to look at how you experience those two things differently and build on that and connect to that. And that's going to be different than the way Sally does it.
Mhm.
And so I take a much more individualized approach. But again, for people out there who are, walking into a situation and suddenly just overcome with dread or anger, it's a good idea to start asking yourself, what is the source of this feeling I'm having? Where's it coming from?
Absolutely. And if you put your heart in your hand on your heart center or your hand in your solar plexus, which is right around the bottom of the rib cage, then ask it, and what kind of feeling are you getting? You're getting a sinking feeling, butterflies. I got to get out of here. That's that's what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. So possibly people are having much more paranormal experiences than they realize.
Yeah, and certainly some of the theories that parapsychologists have developed regarding what paranormal experiences are, a couple of the theories, which I talk about several of them in my book, say, look, this information is there. It is everywhere. It is omnipresent.
Hmm.
The only question is whether or not you pick it up. And many of these theorists believe that the brain is a transponder, right? These experiences are not created by neurochemical processes. Rather, the brain is like a radio that picks up certain wavelengths.
Hmm.
And so, if that information is always out there, what is your radio tuned to?
That's interesting. What is your radio tuned to? Because there's that other theory of being, I'm not going to be remember them all, but if you're kinesthetic, if you're auditorial, there's different, if you're, so I'm going to add to it, if you're empathetic, if
Sure.
you're experiential, because I find some people are such good observers that they read between the lines. You might be acting like you're perfectly fine and I'm pretending I'm happy, but I'm attuned to watching that twitch in your eye, or without even knowing it, I can read body language and right away I'll be like, I'm standing
Mhm.
off because, and so I think, yeah, I love that you said that. People need to know what their language is, I guess,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Do you think that traditional modern therapy moves too quickly towards fixing instead of understanding?
Oh my goodness. Could go on and on and on about that. That's one of my
Did
soapbox
I,
issues. And I
I
said
touched a
earlier,
hot spot.
stay in not knowing, just stay in not knowing. Do you know how many people have been harmed by a therapist feeling the pressure to come up with the answer and fix them quickly
A label.
rather than, yeah, rather than stay in that discomfort of, let's just move around in the muck for a little while until a clear picture emerges. Let's stay there. And for the therapists, if they're collecting insurance, they have pressures. If they work for somebody else, they have pressures. I get that. Um, which is why I chose not to collect insurance or work for somebody else. Um, so, so yeah, I think when you're interviewing a helper, that's another question that you want to ask. Are there time limits here? Do you have time expectations? I've been teaching people neo-hermetic meditation for a little bit now, and I keep wondering what to call myself. And I like the term mentor because a mentorship is open-ended. A mentorship is I'm going to respond, I'm here for you as long as you need me, not there's a time limit or there's a expectation that this will happen very rapidly. It's like, no, let's just see what you need and do that.
That is, I just got an aha moment when you said about the insurance because they have specific rules and boundaries, limitations. And you guys might want to think about that. I'm thinking about that because I have coverage here in Canada, but it's not our Canadian law. It's just I happen to have coverage from a company my husband worked for. And if I'm looking for an alternative type of therapy, I may not get that from an insured social worker that works
Right,
under. That's
right.
very, very interesting.
Yes. Now, I want to add right away, I am doing some consulting with a group called Black Sheep Therapists, and I know at least one of their members is in Canada, although she's in British Columbia. And these are therapists who are learning and teaching each other and studying how do we integrate traditional bona fide therapies with the alternative complementary spiritual
I
practices.
love that
And
name, Black Sheep.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Therapist.
yeah,
Good for you
yeah.
guys.
Yeah. So anyway, a little, shameless self-promotion here. This season on our podcast, we're
No, go for it.
spotlighting
Yeah.
therapists who are enfolding these alternative methods into bona fide therapies, and they're learning how to do it and how to bill for it ethically and legally. Um, and the head of this group, Dr. Tina Vitolo, I joke and I told her, I think that you're the Andrew Weil of psychotherapy. And she said, Who's Andrew Weil? So it's like, okay, maybe I'm old.
He's a doctor
But for those of
nutritionist.
you who
Doctor
aren't as
went
old as me,
nutritionist.
right,
Yeah.
he's one of the first, Harvard MD that said, let's bring alternative methods, healing methods,
Yeah.
along with Western medicine to help
Yeah.
people in a holistic way.
Correct. I love that. So your podcast is Find Our Minds, which you do with your daughter, right?
I do,
She's your
which is,
co-host. I think that's such a blessing that you can
it is so cool.
experience that.
Yeah, and it's really evolved over time because at first it's like I was the lecturer, right? I'm Professor Arnd Caddigan, and she was kind of there moving things along. Um, but everybody gave us the feedback. We love it when the two of you interact. That's our favorite part of the show. So then we moved to just us interacting around topics. And then last season we got some guests and that worked out pretty well. And so this season we have a lot of guests.
That's and so you're focusing on other people that are like therapists or coaches,
Yeah.
etc.,
Yes.
as guests and talking about this spiritual journey. You guys are pioneers. I don't think you're recognizing this, Margaret, that you're a pioneer that's like a black sheep, like you said, because there's
Yeah.
not many, there's so many in the closet. I'm sure a lot of people are nodding their heads right now, going, That's what I do, Holly, and I don't want to be a therapist." And this is, I have worked with doctors, I've worked with nurses, I've worked with therapists and counselors, and I try so hard to get them to not quit their job because they get to the point of burnout and then they don't want to have anything to do with it. And it's not that I don't want them to quit their job. Yes, I do, in a sense, want them to quit their job, but I don't want them to quit their passion and their profession. Be an alternative doctor that maybe you're going to coach other people how to deal with the medical industry, or be a nurse that might advise people that may be afraid to talk to their doctor about certain things, or be that therapist that goes outside of the box and works on a deeper spiritual level. Don't quit the entire, because we need more opportunities. Like you said, we need more options. And if you don't segue into a similar but alternative platform like Dr. Andrew Wills did, then we don't have those people.
Yeah. Yeah, and
Go
and
to.
that's the question to me. And I think it's a really important question. Our my son repeats a saying often, which is that when the institutions no longer meet the needs of the people, you need to build parallel institutions.
Thank you for
So,
saying that. Your son, what's your son's name? Oh, you don't have to
Eamon
give it out.
Caddigan.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that, sir. I've always been talking about the parallel, I call it the Great Divide. And that's when we split into a parallel way of living. Some people will kind of have their foot in both. But there will be another government system. There will be another educational system. There will be another medical system. There will be another monetary system and another agricultural system. It's here now, but it's at like 80-20, if that,
Right. Right.
split, and it will be 50-50, and it'll be normal. Like what parallel,
Right.
which one are you,
So,
which way are you living?
for me, the question becomes, do I want to continue to invest my energy in trying to change the existing system, or
Right.
do I want to invest my energy in building a new system?
Bingo.
And so, whether or not I stay a licensed clinical social worker versus becoming a neo-hermetic mentor, I don't know. And Tina and the Black Sheep people say you can do both simultaneously, and I'm thinking, do I want to do that right now?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know
Hmm.
the answer. I'm giving myself time. I'm on sabbatical from my private practice, and I'll make that decision at the end of my sabbatical.
I believe as you're saying that, it will show up for you. Often when we take that break, and there's all different types of breaks that we can take a break. As you said earlier, we can take a break from trying to fix it. And when we do that, and sometimes people use anger to do that, or they use deep rest or depression to do that, to take a break. I give up. That's not always a bad thing. Maybe you should give up on what you've been trying to fix. And then the answer comes in that empty space. The aha moment or the answer comes. Unfortunately, time is an illusion. So that could be in the space of a week, it could be in the space of 2 years. Like we don't know what that looks like. But yeah, it sounds like the answer will come to you. There's going to be a rise of people wanting to understand a deeper spiritual meaning. And that's where the great divide will happen too. One rise, which is already starting to happen, and I predicted it a while ago, is religion. Well, people will lean towards the old fashioned church religion, prayer, to find that spiritual version. And then others who, as I've been even told, will be burned at the stake, will find other spiritual. And I believe they should be blended together as well. But there may be a divide of that for a while. Ancient mysticism is accurate, and that is intertwined with old religion, but they separated it along the way somehow and made them completely different. A little bit of disempowering us. But yeah, I agree with you. Uh, People will start to find, and whichever way they go, I don't condemn either way. I just think they should be blended. Just like when I go to a doctor, my doctor should be able to talk to me like a nutritionist as well, or work with a nutritionist who can. Should
Mhm.
be able to work with a spiritual advisor as well, or work with one who can support me. All these modalities should be blended together, but they're not yet. We're getting there.
Yeah,
Do you think
yeah,
we're getting
yeah.
there?
I hope so. Coming from academia, in spite of the fact that everybody says that academia teaches wokeness, academia is very conservative intellectually. You're not allowed to have new thoughts. And if your thought is new, it can only be a little tiny bit new. And it really has to cite all of the dead white men that came before you. And if you don't do that, your article's not going to get published and your research not is not going to be funded. And so change in academia is very, very, very slow. I I don't know now. I know that it's being challenged. I know it's being challenged on many, many, many fronts. I don't know how it's going to respond to that challenge. And again,
Take a
my
long time.
question becomes, are people going to put their energy into trying to save the existing institution that's been there since the Middle Ages? Or are they going to take their eggs and try to build a new institution?
We're getting
This,
there. We're
We'll
getting there.
s-
We're still isolated. We still feel that we have to do it on our own. I have to homeschool my child. I have to take my child's mental health into my own hands. I have to take my own mental health into my own hands. We're not doing this collectively yet. Not
Right.
yet. Not enough. I was
Right.
hoping during the pandemic that, and I was even advising some of my clients that there would be more of a collective of homeschooling children that, they would rent out the basement of a church or rotate around different homes and homeschool 20 kids together.
Mm-hmm.
And that would create a different type of institution, a people kind of empowered, but it didn't really work out that way. Mothers were quitting their jobs and trying to do it on their own. They still are,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is a sad state, but we will get there. Like you said, it's very, very slow. I want to wrap this up. Embracing Paranormal Experiences is the book that you're promoting right now. How can people get a hold of you? Can they contact you? Are you still taking clients like while you're on
Absolutely.
sabbatical?
I am not taking psychotherapy clients. I am talking to people who think they might be interested in neo-hermetic mentorship. I am continuing to do that now. The best way to get a hold of me is at finding our minds, one word, at gmail.com. Uh, Email me there.
Your
And
podcast is
again,
everywhere, Spotify,
yeah,
Apple.
my podcast is on every single platform. And again, that's, thank you, my director daughter. Um, they do all that work. And that is also called Finding Our Minds, although that's three separate words.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, I'm easy to find.
I love that title, opposed to losing our minds. But you do have to lose it to find it. Just saying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much, Margaret, for being a guest on
Thank
my
you.
show. I really enjoyed this conversation. I could go on and on
Thank you.
talking with you. Maybe we'll have you back again.
I would love that. I would love that. And if the right season comes up, I'm going to call you and ask you to turn the tables and be my guest.
I would love to be your
This
guest.
has been very fun.
Yes, I am. I'm on board. Just give me the date and I'll make it work. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone, for listening and spending your precious time learning and growing and evolving. And if you're working as a therapist, a counselor, a life coach, you definitely have to get her book. You can get that on Amazon. All the links are going to be below. You're listening to this on Spotify, Apple, YouTube. You're seeing clips on TikTok or YouTube. Head over to the full edition and listen to it and take a look at her podcast. Listen to her podcast. I was listening to them. Very, very, very fun. It's a great experience and you're learning at the same time. So it's a win-win situation. Thank
Yeah.
you, Margaret. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.